Hello all, my name is Sam Basher and welcome to Might Be Awesome. This is the show where we take the biggest questions in the nerd space and try to find out what makes them awesome. Today we'll be turning our attention towards Avengers Infinity War, the 2018 blockbuster smash bringing together every conceivable corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, minus Ant-Man, the Wasp, Hawkeye, Captain Marvel, the Defenders, Cloak and Dagger, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Runaways, those kids, they can't fight in this, and the Inhumans.
Never.
Our heroes came together to take on the Mad Titan Thanos. Jack Grimace here combined all of the Care Bear magic into his wishing glove to perform the ultimate Care Bear stare, the one where the Care Bears wipe out half of all life in existence. Don't underestimate the power of friendship, my dudes. With the release of Avengers Endgame rapidly approaching, fans have been hungrily searching for answers to the big questions. How do the Avengers reverse Thanos' snap? Did the snap wipe out 50% of Cap's hair follicles and that's why his glorious beard is bye-bye? Happened to Hawkeye. The one Hawkeye fan out there. Don't worry, dude, I love it. It's for aerodynamics. Also, how did Thanos snap with a metal glove? Yeah, I'm gonna start a fire before I snap. Unlicensed toys, get them here, it might be awesome. When you're a jet all the way. Remember, you guys ever seen West Side Story? While all these questions would take us down some rather interesting rabbit holes, let's go ahead and warm up our time stones and wind back the clock to the most important question. What would it look like if half of all life on Earth disappeared? Is it the utter nightmare that the multiple Endgame trailers make it out to be? I mean, I live in LA. It took me 40 minutes just to drive 10 miles. While that was primo podcast time, the idea of there being fewer people on the road might be awesome. So first off, let's take a look at Thanos' goal, specifically the MCU, not the comics Thanos. Shout out to the Thanos copter. We learn in Infinity War that when he was living on Titan with the Eternals, aka the residents of Titan, they were facing difficult times with limited resources, and Thanos suggested culling half of the population at random to solve such problems, sacrificing a few to save the many in the long run. His philosophy is rejected, and from Thanos' perspective, Titan ended up driving itself into ruin. Now keep in mind, the person telling this story and the only living person that we know of that has any insight as to what was happening on Titan is Thanos. Just saying the perspective of a genocidal mass murderer might be a bit, skewed. But back on track, Thanos begins a quest to find the 6 Happy Meal toys that can come together into one super weapon that, in his eyes, can spare the rest of the universe of the fate of Titan. Now, this entire idea actually got a lot of people intrigued after watching Infinity War. The idea of decreating or deleting half of all sentient life on Earth could actually curb or stop some of the problems that we're facing today as a global community. The rich aren't favored over the poor, or men over women, or one community over the other. It's just random. At a quick glance, one might think that with the newly available resources to a smaller group of individuals, humanity might have a shot at slowing or stopping global warming, ending world hunger, and so on. Heck, wouldn't that be swell? But here's the thing, gang. Thanos ain't right. He just isn't. Not even a little bit. And you wanna know why? Because he didn't just delete half of all sentient or advanced life in the universe, he deleted half of all life. So we're talking plants and animals, people. You might ask me where I deduced this from during Avengers Infinity War, but the answer is, I didn't. King MCU himself, Kevin Feige, confirmed it in an interview that when Thanos erased half of all life, he meant all life. For those of you asking, and based on current statistics, we're talking over 3 billion people who just became dust in the wind that you probably accidentally inhaled. It's pretty gross. All right, now come the big questions. Did Thanos cull larger populations of animals, such as cattle or chicken or possibly rats, more than smaller endangered species? Were all endangered species just wiped from the planet and the biodiversity is the worst it's ever been? Or were they spared, but all of their handlers and protectors or possibly their food source now gone, so they're as good as dead? Actually, speaking of that, how are the crops looking? Would we be seeing the decimation of some smaller community's only source of income? Or how about larger forests like the Amazon that produce 20% of our oxygen? Is that just gone? Also, what about microscopic organisms? Did we just see some key species totally wiped out and possibly more vicious and harmful species spared? What about our internal biome? Did we possibly lose an internal ecosystem to fight off harmful pathogens in the name of, quote, balance? Maybe our single-celled buddies could replicate fast enough to be okay, but we can only hope. I feel like we gotta ask again, why did Grimace do this? In Infinity War, the elevator pitch we heard was that prior to the acquisition of the Infinity Stones, Thanos was killing planets with his bare hands, aka with an army and lackeys and superpowers, you know. Bare hands. We heard that those worlds were now flourishing and beings had enough food to go around. So why would Thanos shrink our natural resources? To be honest, guys, I'm starting to think that having all life and our resources doesn't really solve any problems. You're actually probably just scaling it down. Also, we might even have more trouble on our hands following the next few hours after the snap. As shown in the post-credit scene where Nick Fury and Maria Hill are snapped away, we see multiple car crashes and even a helicopter colliding with the side of a skyscraper. With the removal of numerous vehicle operators and the panic that follows, a good chunk of the motor pool just became runaway projectiles. And by good chunk, for example, we're talking roughly 5 million active drivers on the road at any one time in the Los Angeles area who have now vanished or are now avoiding oncoming vehicles, as well as 5,000 planes in the air over the United States at any given time, now either pilotless or scrambling due to the disappearance of their passengers or crew. Remember earlier when I mentioned I wanted an easier commute? Yeah, I'm pretty bummed too. But let's not be too negative. After all is said and done, how are we doing? Well, besides the massive depression financially and emotionally that the entire population will be plummeted into, and all the tow trucks attempting to move millions of cars off the roads, and us attempting to rebuild crumbling infrastructure, we good? Bad news, gang. We're still not great. There's really no way for a lot of families and individuals to move forward after something like this. For example, most insurance coverages don't include acts of God. For the MCU, this is one of the biggest acts of God that has ever been experienced outside of Thor's pecs, of course. Sure, we could see some of the more philanthropic social elite reach out to help, but with Tony Stark stranded out in space, who does that leave? This would also be a time for people to take the most advantage of those who are struggling. If anything, we'd be seeing the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer.
Greed is right.
Look, I get it. The world's a scary place right now, and at any given second, it feels like it's going to break apart, and we just want things to be simpler with simple answers. But the problems that we face today are not going to be fixed that way. One thing that we like to point to all the time, and Thanos as well, is overpopulation. One of his main arguments for the halvening. Overpopulation is a real concern in science fiction. But when it comes to the effect it has on climate change and available resources, it's actually the least of our worries, especially when it comes to countries with slower population growths like the United States. When it comes to square miles to per person population, the United States could host 400 million more citizens before anything became a problem, and that's true for most developed nations. The United States also has the ability to feed all of its current population with what it's currently producing and exporting. And sure, we're not so good at making all those resources available to our own people, but we could, you'd hope. As for current world crises like the ever-growing trash pile in the ocean, that would probably only get worse. I'd say that making sure that people can have access to food and medicine, as well as clearing roads of abandoned cars, are more of a priority than cleaning those oceans, at least for the first decade or two. You know what, gang? I'll be honest. Thanos' idea of balance is starting to sound like a, dare I say, hollow idea. Sure, some hardcore fans could say that with the help of the Infinity Stones, Thanos might have the insight to not totally kneecap the populations of these worlds and allow them to live happy, healthy futures. But in case he decided to stick to his guns and actually half the world equally, we just don't know what that's gonna look like, but all signs point to bad. But hey, these are just a few of the horrible side effects of our world being halved by a crazy space race. And what are some of the other ones? Let us know in the comments down below what other terrifying aftershocks could happen from an event like this. I'm smelling a new religion. But also like this video, subscribe to Might Be Awesome for more content, and hit that bell notification icon for more. Get behind the scenes content over at our Patreon, which you can click somewhere right around here. And listen to the Only Stupid Answers podcast that comes out every Monday. My name is Sam Basher, and I'll see you next time.